Welcome to the Tudor Dixon Podcast. I am so excited because we have the United States Secretary of Veteran Affairs, Doug Collins, with us. Thank you so much, Mr. Secretary, for joining me today.
Dude, it was good to see you today.
I want to start off with what you did, I think it was last week with Caitlin Collins, because she was going after you. Can't even remember what she was going after you about, because you were so good at handling this leftist, nasty media that will not talk about our veterans.
No, they didn't want to. And look, we had discussed it. It came up in the signal issues that with the messages and
That's
stuff.
Right, yeah.
And so, and look, I'll tell my story here. There is a sense that we had agreed to come on and talk about veterans, and I don't mind tough questions, hard questions. I mean, I've been doing this for 20 years in politics. I get it, and that's fine. But what we want to do is talk about the veterans. And so she came on actually before the interview and was, small chat like, you've done on interviews before. And she said, well, we're going to ask you about the signal stuff. And I said, and I told her, I said, Caitlin, that's fine. I said, but I'll answer it once, and I don't want to dwell here. I said, we got issues with veterans. I want to talk about that. And she made it clear. She said, oh, no problem. I got plenty of questions about the VA and veterans. I said, okay. So we got off. So we get on the interview. Their first question was about the signal messaging issue. I answered it. She came back with another question about the exact, basically same thing. And I said, Caitlin, I said, I've already answered that question. I'm not going to have anything else to expand on. I wasn't a part of it. Not going to do it. And then she went the third time. And this is baseball season, and that was over. If she wasn't going to talk about veterans, then I wanted to talk about veterans on why CNN has disrespected veterans and defamed veterans and lost a court case on defamation for $5 million to a veteran in Florida. And the person who made one of the comments, one of their producers, said, we're going to nail him. They're still employed at CNN.
I thought that was genius. I mean, I've never seen it done so well and so deserved that she would be asked that question, because I didn't even know that you had had the conversation ahead of time. I think that's the beauty of being able to talk on a podcast, is to say, look, the background is that we said, we'll answer it, but we want to talk about veterans. And there's a lot of people right now who feel like the leftist media is coming after you and saying you're getting rid of people, you're firing veterans, this is not good for them. And I've heard you talk about this a few times about how, look, to be able to take care of veterans, we need that money spent the right way. So I wanted you to be able to answer to that too, because I think it's great that you were able to go after Caitlin Collins and point out the fact that she was being disrespectful to our veterans, but also she never cared to find out what is actually going on.
Well, I think that's the big problem here, Tudor. And it's not, look, I hate it. I don't like to have interviews that just go like that, but also I'm not going to let anybody I'm not going to let anybody talk bad about my veterans. I'm not going to talk bad about the VA employees, but also at the same point in time, when you have a narrative, we're not going to just play along with your narrative. I think many times, many of our side has sort of just played the narrative and tried to defend. I just am not going to play the narrative that they want to have, especially when that narrative is, directly opposed to what I'm trying to do as VA secretary. And look, I've been here about 2 months now. We're going on 2 months. In fact, pretty much today, close to today, tomorrow is 2 months. And, all I'm doing is fighting innuendo and rumor. And it's out there that, depending on who you want to listen to, which senator wants to tell, stories today, we've done everything from, shut down the VA system and privatized it to, firing 80,000 people to, going back and forth, and you name it, we've done it. The truth of the matter is that at this point in time, due to some court case and everything else, basically our staffing levels are the same, except for those who chose early retirement. But the bigger problem here, Tudor, is what people have got to understand. The VA is bigger than the active duty Army. Let's just start off here. We're bigger than the active duty Army. Okay.
What do you mean? Like employee-wise?
Employee-wise.
That's crazy.
Yeah, right now, Pete could mobilize the entire active duty Army force, and I could best him by about 20,000.
That's actually terrifying.
Well, it is, because it's grown many times. And I've always said, I think, the Hill is when it comes to issues of, and this has been very true for a number of years, when it's the Congress and also your state legislatures as well, it's very true there too, that if it's dealing with children or dealing with veterans, nobody wants to be perceived as not giving something to them. Okay. The issue is, though, is what are you giving? and I think this is true for any issue that you have. Is it giving just to appease your own conscience, or is it giving to make sure that we're actually, from my perspective, putting VA services to veterans who've earned that health benefit or that disability or other benefit? It could be housing, it could be educational, it could be other things. Are we making that the most appropriate way? So when I tell you that we have 470-ish thousand employees, how big we are, we also have a budget of $350 billion. What is unknown to most people, though, is over the last 4 years, we added over $100 billion, almost $150 billion, and averaged over 80,000 employees, 50 full-time, about 30 part-time. 10 years ago, we were less than half of that. Okay.
Well, but have you seen an improvement in veteran services?
That's your problem. If that had worked, we should be the happiest department on. We should be the happiest department on earth. The problem is it's not. For the last 10 years, GAO, the Government Accounting Office, has said that we're on the high risk list for fraud, waste, and abuse, patient care, patient quality. So for 10 years, the VA has increased its budget, close to $200,000, $200 billion. I apologize, $200 billion, and probably somewhere close to 150 or 1,000 more employees, depending on those exact numbers, depending on when you want to look at it. But we've increased money and size, but yet the metrics in our healthcare system, some systems, some of our medical centers are better, some are not. We have, our caseload has been relatively flat across this time frame as well. Disability benefits have went up because of PACT Act and some other things. But what we're looking at here is a system that for 10 years has been said, look, it's not where it needs to be. And yet all we do is put money and people toward it without saying, is it making a difference? And I can tell you from a health perspective, sort of flat on metrics, on a backlog perspective for our benefits, we've actually got worse. So under Trump, it was under 60,000. When I took over, it was about 230,000 backlog on disability benefits. So with all that money and people, we actually, went from under 60 to over 200,000 in backlog.
And we hear a lot about veteran suicides. And I think that that's been kind of the talking point of, I guess, the people who want to continue to grow government is, well, you have this hanging over your head. Has that reduced at all in this period?
No, it's not. And that's a really concern. You look at from 2008 to 2024, 22, the last few numbers, we've stayed about between 6,400 and about in the highs of almost close to 7,000 veterans death by suicide each year.
Jeez.
And that's the ones that we calculate the way our formulaic process does. There's some who out there who say it's actually more. But the real issue you have here, and this is something for your listeners to be aware of, is that we've also have a budget of about $588 million in prevention, what is tagged as suicide prevention, and also about $2.3 billion that is used for treatment and counseling, the things that are done to help people get out of that state. So you're looking at about $3 billion that has been pretty consistent for about the last 4 to 5 years. So if you add those numbers up, you're looking at well over $10 billion that have been spent in some form or fashion on suicide, and yet our numbers haven't moved. So I've came in and started asking different, questions. So like, why is it not moved? Why are we not, and then I found out even further, we spend a lot of our time on our crisis line, which is, a lot of our resources go there. But then I started seeing that, we spend less than, right at 1% to community outreach and to organizations that are doing stuff, less than 1%. And yet we found out that 17 number, if we use that 17 number, 50% of those have never been touched by VA. I mean, we're going at a model. It's like we're using a model from 30, 40 years ago that we just can't get out of the car, so to speak. So my question is, and I ask all these all the time, I said, if it's not working and we're not getting good results, then quit expecting different results.
Well, is there an opportunity for private-public partnership here? Because we do have a lot of organizations where veterans are kind of like a buddy system where they keep somebody on track.
Yep, there very much so is, Tudor. I think this is why I'm opening up. I mean, I'm open to any, we have a lot of veteran service organizations out there. Many are familiar with what I call the mainline, veterans, the Paralyzed Veterans, DVA, American Legion, VFW. I mean, most people know those, but they're sort of organizations that's been around a long time, and they do some good stuff with what they try to do. But then you've got a lot of newer groups in over the last 20 years. A lot of them are GWAT, my generation of veteran, that are coming out. Wounded Warrior Project, and there's a lot of things. Tunnels to Towers. There's a lot of other agencies out there, and I don't want to name them all or name check them because there's just a lot. But they're using their resources and have very little overhead in comparison to what they actually spend their money on. And they're seeing some good results in how we deal with post-traumatic stress syndrome, TBI, traumatic brain injury, those kind of things. So yes, I'm open to anybody that's willing to come to the table and help me lower that 17 number. And I'll be very frank, if 588 million is not enough, then I'm happily to go fight for more money if I'm seeing the 17 number go down. But if that number's not going down, then we got to figure out what we're not doing right. And if it's not with us, then I'll just want them to get help somewhere.
Well, and I think that's the point that people don't get, that there is not a slashing of, it's not just looking for money to get rid of. You really want to see results. And that is where that narrative is getting lost in the leftist media, is that what is happening in Washington, D.C. right now is because there is money being spent and the results are not there, whether it's education, whether it's veterans, whether it's homelessness. We continue to have either worsening numbers or stagnant numbers, and that should not be acceptable. We should not be okay with that. Let me ask you, if there were not a President Donald Trump, would you ever be able to do this?
No. And I think what we've seen in the last little bit is this. Even Trump one actually did a lot of great things. We had the Mission Act out. I was in Congress when we did that, which gives much more choice to our veterans to go into the community and get care if the wait times or their distances to facilities are over a certain mileage. That helps us out. That keeps the care local. It's still VA care. We pay for it. But yet it helps us make sure that our veterans are getting the care in a timely fashion in the way they need it. He was very, every time I talk to the president about it, one of the things he talks about is community care. And so it's something that we've had the ability to do, but also his willingness to come in and reimagine government. He ran on it. He talked about it. This is the whole essence of why we're here. Gives us the ability to now to put more, from my military background, it puts us, sort of more lead on the target. We're going after helping veterans. We're going after making sure they get their benefits. And the VA itself, so I love my VA employees, but are we staffed in the proper ways? And I think that's the issue that we're having to deal with now, and funded in ways that are actually putting money toward the areas of healthcare and actually toward benefits as we're supposed to.
This isn't a new concept, though. It's not as though we haven't heard Democrats say this. Democrats who have run for president, Democrats who have been president, Democrat senators, people have consistently said, we want to get rid of the waste and actually see results. So why is it that now you are having Democrat senators just attack you over this?
Well, I think it's a constituency served, and many of my colleagues in the Democrat side, and I respect their opinions, but the opinions is you've seen the same thing the same way for a long time. You're not getting a better result. I think it's because that they're more concerned with the structure of government than they are the results of government. And let that one sink in for a minute. They're more concerned about how government fits and size at times it appears than they do what does it mean for that government agency to exist. I mean, you mentioned education, of course, with the VA and others, are they doing what they're supposed to be doing? Or are we simply building up a union workforce or a labor workforce or a jobs program in many of these government agencies that are not actually effectuating the change that we need to see? So I think that's the problem.
I think people need to understand there's no celebration of getting rid of people. When, I keep hearing people on the left that are like, oh, they want to just get rid of all these jobs and these poor people. And to be honest, I've heard some people on the right side of the aisle that have been like, good, go get another job. Now, I agree. We've all experienced either having to lay people off or being laid off ourselves. There's no joy in that. There are other jobs out there, but there's no joy in that. What do you say to those people that say, oh, this is just about cutting people? I mean, there's really a calculated decision there with every person.
Well, it is. The question comes is are the jobs that we have in the manpower that we have in the money being spent, is it in profitable jobs that actually help our veterans? And it may not be. It may be in areas that they may actually have more fulfillment and others in a different career line. Tudor, you and I both are when in business. We've actually hired people. And I've been fired as well, so I know both ends of the spectrum. But I don't take any joy in it at all, because I wish that we were able to use I wish that we'd have built the structure to fit the veteran instead of having the structure built to fit the VA. And that's a big difference in perspective. And if the structure is built to facilitate the VA, then we're not able to in turn give the proper needs to the veteran. So I think that's what we're turning this model on its head a little bit, because if you have people out there who are doing jobs or they're that are not fulfilling, or they're not able to accomplish that mission, then we're not being good stewards of not only the taxpayers' money, but remember, veterans pay taxes too. And so we're not spending the money in which is supposed to be done.
Stay tuned. We have more with VA Secretary Doug Collins. But first, let me tell you more about my partners at IFCJ. After more than a year of war, terror, and pain in Israel, the need for security essentials and support for first responders is still critical. Israel must be prepared for the next attack, wherever it may come from, because they're surrounded on all sides by enemies. The International Fellowship of Christians and Jews has supported and will continue to support the people of Israel with life-saving security essentials. Your gift today will help save lives by providing bomb shelters, armored security vehicles, and ambulances, fighting equipment, flak jackets, and bulletproof vests, and so much more. Your generous donation today will help ensure the people of Israel are safe and secure in the days to come, as these threats remain imminent. Give a gift to bless Israel and her people by visiting supportifcj.org. It's one word. It's supportifcj.org. Or you can call 888-488-IFCJ. That's 888-488-IFCJ. Again, 888-488-4325. Now stay tuned. We have more coming up after this. What about some of the crazy things? I mean, we're hearing that DOJ uncovered an agreement with the VA for $380,000 a month for minor website modifications. When you find that out, do you think that this is nefarious, or do you think this is just incompetence?
I'm going to say it's somewhere in the middle. I think it's just we had the money and we got to spend it. I mean, Tudor, as someone who's been in government, and I've been in the military for years, I mean, it was a common thing in military circles. Okay, I'll take it out of the VA for a second. I remember many times that in August and September in the reserves, we would get these frantic messages from our supervisors and stuff saying, end of year's coming, get these, send us any purchasing request right now under $10,000. And I mean, we would get 2 computers, or we get stuff that, we have because they had to spend the money before the end of the year. So I'm going to be sort of kind in the middle on this. I think some of it was probably not knowing what they're doing. I think some of it was, helping out, contracts that got awry. But I think it's somewhere in the middle. I think it goes back to an understanding that government is being used for something government was never intended to be. And that is an unlimited trough of money. That is an unlimited way to hire and shape our attitudes. But I also have to remind people, and I was going to say this a minute ago, you talk about everybody talking about it now. This is not the original DOJ. Everybody talks about DOJ. The original DOJ is Bill Clinton and Al Gore.
Yeah. Yes.
They cut 14% out of the workforce for almost 250 and 300,000 people out of government / regulations in the 90s. The same press that thought that was the most amazing thing in the world are now some of the same press and members of Congress who believe that what we're doing is terrible. So I think frankly, the President, Trump, ought to bring Bill and Al back, give them an award in the Rose Garden for being the original DOJ founders.
That is clever. I like that idea. I think that's very good. One thing I want to just touch on before I let you go, you brought up earlier that you have about 250,000 people that are waiting for their benefits to be approved, or is that?
No, a lot of that is disability side. Okay. Some have been, they've giving information. Some of it's not been finished. I mean, there's a lot of reasons, but the problem is we're not moving them quick enough. And I think that's our problem. We are looking at doing a lot of automation now to knock out some of the ones that we can. But you would be amazed. Everybody talks about, well, what have you learned? Well, I've learned that we're so bureaucratic that sometimes our bureaucracy actually gets in the way of our bureaucracy. And,
Yes.
that's a pretty amazing statement, but it's just like, really, how we do this. I've told everywhere. I was up in your wonderful part of the world in Michigan just this past week, and I went to the health, Battle Creek, Ann Arbor, and Detroit. Went to all the our medical centers there. Also went to the Custer Cemetery there, which is a great place. If you're in central southern Michigan down there, go by that cemetery. It's an amazing, humbling place to go to, just to see the beauty of it up near right next to the Battle Creek VMA, VAMC up there. But what you're seeing is that there's a lot that we have that is beneficial. But I told them, you're letting the system get in the way of what you're supposed to do. So I told them, I said, if you have 10 steps to get a benefit, then can you do it in 5? If there's 10 steps to getting into the hospital and getting approved for your health care, can we do that in 5? I mean, start helping this veteran get in, because once they get in, they tend to be okay with the care they're getting, but it's the getting in process that's the hard.
That's what I think is so beautiful about what's happening in all of these agencies. And I think that should come to the state level too. I mean, that's what we see in automotive with Six Sigma and all of these different programs, is streamline the process. In the state of Michigan, we get beat out by every other state for a bid for a new business because it takes us so long to return the answer to the company that's requesting. If you can cut out those processes, bureaucracy can sometimes just crush the next step. And that's what I think is so beautiful. You guys are just removing the barriers to make sure the people are getting what they need.
Exactly. And that's one of the things I've tried to bring to the table up here is, as I don't do long meetings, we do meetings with a point. If you send ahead notes to let me know what we're going to be at my level, I mean, the meetings I take, I need that. I read all those in the morning. I'm up at 5:30. I'm in the gym, and then I'm in my office. And I read those reports. And so when we get to meetings, I don't just have a regurgitation of what's on the PowerPoint. In fact, I won't let it. I say, okay, here's the questions I have. How do we make it better? What decisions do you need? And we make decisions and we move. I've told our VA employees, I said, I need you to fail faster. I need you to get out there and start trying to do stuff. If it doesn't work, fine. You'll never get in trouble with me on trying to help a veteran and that idea doesn't work, because you know what? The next idea will work. And
I love that.
Maybe the next idea. That's what we got to be.
I love that. Thank you so much, Secretary Doug Collins. You guys are doing an amazing job, and I'm so glad you got to share it with us today.
Be here with you too. Take care.
Thank you. And thank you all for listening to the Tudor Dixon Podcast. Make sure you check out the more podcasts on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts, and join us next time. Have a blessed day.